The drop carrier. Aquila Sovereign. Hung in the void above Silter 4, its massive bulk silhouetted against the planet's acidic yellow atmosphere. From the observation deck, Captain Mara Reaper Kincaid watched the swirling toxic clouds below with a mixture of determination and apprehension. This industrialized mining world, once a jewel in the Galactic Council's economic crown, had fallen to the Skarathi 3 standard weeks ago. Now it was her job to take it back, or at least rescue what remained of the Council's leadership trapped beneath the capital city. Still admiring the view, Captain? Or just delaying the inevitable? The voice belonged to Council Liaison Viren Tal, a tall, gaunt alien with blue-tinged skin and 6 fingers on each hand. His species, the Vrexians, had been among the founding members of the Galactic Council centuries before humans had achieved interstellar travel. Mara turned, meeting his skeptical gaze with a level one of her own. Gathering intel, liaison, every atmospheric current, every acid storm pattern, they all inform our drop strategy. Viren Tal made a dismissive gesture with his elongated fingers. Strategy? You humans and your primitive tactics. Paratroopers. In the age of quantum teleportation and molecular transport? He gave a chittering laugh, the Vrexian equivalent of a derisive snort. The Council indulges Earth's inclusion only because your species breeds so quickly and fights with such enthusiasm. Mara had heard it all before. The 105th Human Skyborn Rangers, her Rangers, were considered a quaint novelty at best, a dangerous liability at worst. Never mind that quantum teleportation failed consistently in Skarathi-controlled areas, or that molecular transport couldn't penetrate the psychic interference the insectoids generated. No, the mighty Galactic Council preferred to ignore the evidence that their advanced technology had fatal flaws. With respect, liaison, Mara replied, her voice deceptively calm. 3 Council drop ships have already been destroyed attempting conventional insertion. The Governor's staff and remaining War Council are still trapped in that bunker. Unless you have another solution, we drop in 90 minutes. The comlink on her wrist chirped before Viren could respond. The face of Lieutenant Jovan Specs Mira appeared on the small screen. Captain, final equipment checks complete. Teams assembled in the drop bay. On my way, Lieutenant. Mara nodded once more to the liaison. Feel free to observe from the command deck, sir. I'm sure the Council will want a detailed report of our failure. As she strode away, Viren called after her. Captain Kincaid, the Council Generals are broadcasting a challenge directly to your unit. They claim this mission is merely human glory hunting. They say, even if you succeed, it proves nothing about your methods. Mara didn't break stride or turn around. Then we'll just have to prove them wrong, won't we? The drop bay of the Aquila Sovereign buzzed with controlled chaos as 65 Rangers made their final preparations. Their exo-armor, a mixture of lightweight carbon-titanium alloy and reactive polymers, gleamed under the harsh lights. Unlike the sleek, minimalist equipment favored by the Council's forces, human gear looked almost barbaric, bulky, covered in pockets and attachments, built for versatility and survival rather than aesthetics. Lieutenant Mira approached as Mara entered, his dark features set in concentration as he tapped on a data pad. At 28, he was 4 years younger than Mara, but already had the focused intensity of a veteran. Skarathi activity is spiking in sectors 3 through 7, he reported, showing her a holographic map of Siltar's capital. They know we're coming. They always do. It's their psychic network. Mara studied the map, noting the concentration of red dots indicating enemy positions. What's the latest from the war room bunker? Sporadic communications only. Governor Elenis is confirmed alive. along with at least 12 staff members and 3 council generals. They've barricaded themselves in the central chamber, but Skarathi are trying to cut through the doors. Sergeant Asha rejoined them, her compact frame belying her strength. As the unit's demolitions expert, she carried twice the ordnance of a standard ranger. Atmospheric readings updated. Captain, we've got acid storms forming in the upper troposphere. Drop window is narrowing to 63 minutes. Mara nodded. Then we jump in 50. Prep the team. As her officers moved away, Mara began her own equipment check. The ritual was as familiar as breathing after 15 years of jumps. Seal integrity, oxygen supply, weapons systems, thrust controls, emergency protocols. Her fingers moved automatically, but her mind was partly elsewhere. 8 years ago, her brother Marcus had died on a standard drop, one the Council had assured would encounter minimal resistance. The memory of the notification still burned. Commander Kincaid's drop pod experienced a catastrophic failure upon atmospheric entry. No body recovered, no proper burial. Just another human statistic in the Council's endless war against the Skarathi. A chime sounded throughout the bay, snapping Mara back to the present. The massive doors began to retract, revealing the swirling yellow hell of Siltar 4 below. The Rangers assembled into their jump formations, 5-person clusters that would stay together during the initial drop before breaking apart for tactical flexibility closer to the ground. Council observers lined the upper gallery, their expressions ranging from curiosity to open disdain. One Vrexian officer leaned over to whisper to a colleague, loud enough for Mara to hear. "Watch how many of them die before they even reach the surface." Mara turned to address her Rangers, their faces a mix of humanity's diversity, united by purpose, and the silver wings emblem on their shoulder plates. "Rangers of the 105th, her voice carried across the bay without the need for amplification, a skill honed through years of command. "The Council thinks we're obsolete, relics of warfare from centuries past. They think humans jump because we're too primitive to develop proper insertion technology." She paced along the line, making eye contact with each soldier. "But we know better. We jump because it works. We jump because sometimes the oldest solutions are still the best. We jump because no Skarathi defense system is designed to track 65 crazy humans falling from the sky at terminal velocity." A ripple of grim laughter passed through the ranks. "Our mission is clear. Reach the war room bunker, extract the governor and council personnel, and get them back to the extraction point. Simple objective, complex execution." Mara activated her helmet, the faceplate sliding into place with a pneumatic hiss. "As always, Rangers, gravity is our ally. The enemy is below. Between us and them is just air, and air. Air we own. Air we own." The response thundered back from 64 throats as helmets sealed and final systems engaged. Mara's voice softened slightly, audible only through the team's comm channel. "Jump safe. See you on the ground." The warning klaxon sounded 3 times, and then the deck beneath their feet vanished as the gravity field deactivated. 65 armored figures dropped into Siltar's angry skies. The first seconds of a hyper-gravity drop always brought the same sensations: the stomach-lurching free fall, the rush of blood to the head despite the suit's compensation systems, and the utter, terrifying freedom of falling without a physical connection to anything solid. For these moments, Mara was neither captain nor sister nor daughter. She was pure momentum, a vector cutting through space. Then reality reasserted itself as her heads-up display bloomed with tactical data. Altitude, 93,000 meters. Velocity, increasing. External temperature, caustic. estimated time to ground. 4 minutes. 22 seconds at current acceleration. Ranger teams, report status, she commanded, her voice steady despite plummeting at nearly 200 meters per second. Alpha team, nominal drop. Bravo team, aligned and falling. Charlie team, good to go. Delta team, on your 6. Captain. Echo team, all systems green. The comforting litany continued until all 12 teams had reported in. So far, so good. But they hadn't hit the atmosphere proper yet. Atmospheric boundary in 10 seconds. Mira's voice announced over the comm. Brace for turbulence. The warning was barely sufficient. The Rangers hit Silter's upper atmosphere like stones striking water, their bodies suddenly encountering resistance after the vacuum of near space. Despite inertial dampeners, the shock rattled teeth and bones. Deploying primary stabilizers, Mara ordered. From each Ranger's back, small wings extended, transforming their uncontrolled plummet into a steep but guided descent. The formation spread out, presenting a smaller target profile to any ground defenses. They didn't have to wait long for the Skarathi response. At 75,000 meters, the first wave of interceptors rose to meet them, biomechanical constructs that looked like a nightmarish fusion of wasp and fighter jet, trailing iridescent vapor from venom sacs. "Incoming! 3 o'clock high!" Sergeant Ree called out. "At least 30 bogies." "Weapons free," Mara commanded. "Evasive pattern, Delta?" The formation fragmented further as Rangers activated their thrust controls, darting in unpredictable patterns while firing upward. Plasma bolts and tracer rounds illuminated the acidic clouds, creating an eerie light show against the yellow backdrop. The first casualties came moments later. Private Kwan from Echo Team took a direct hit from an acid projectile, the corrosive substance eating through his shoulder armor before the self-sealing protocols could activate. His scream cut through the comm channel before Lieutenant Mira remotely muted his frequency. "Medic to Echo position," Mara ordered, but she knew it was futile. At this velocity, in these conditions, there was no stopping to help the wounded. The best they could hope for was that Kwan's emergency beacon would allow retrieval teams to find him later, if he survived the landing. 2 more Rangers fell to the interceptors, their life signs flatlining on Mara's HUD, 62 remaining. The Council observers would be noting the deaths with clinical detachment, further evidence that human methods were wasteful and inefficient. At 50,000 meters, they broke through the densest cloud layer and got their first view of Siltar's capital city below. Once a gleaming metropolis of spiraling towers and suspended walkways, it now resembled a half-melted candle, buildings sagging and warped from Skarathi bio-corrosive weapons. The central government district, their target, was still partially intact, protected by shields that had held just long enough for the staff to retreat to the underground bunker. "New contacts!" Mira's voice was sharp with alarm. "Mass launch from the southern quadrant!" Mara's display updated to show hundreds, no, thousands, of smaller signatures rising toward them. Not interceptors this time, but swarms of what the Rangers had nicknamed needlers, tiny, rocket-propelled organisms that functioned like living bullets, each carrying enough neurotoxin to kill a human instantly if they penetrated armor. "Tight formation, now," Mara ordered. "Overlapping fields. Countermeasures active." The Rangers pulled together into defensive clusters, their armor systems generating electromagnetic pulses that confused the organic guidance systems of the needlers. It was an effective tactic, but it also slowed their descent and made them more vulnerable to the larger interceptors still hunting them. Private Rodriguez from Bravo Team disappeared in a spray of acid and metal as 3 interceptors converged on his position. Moments later, half of Delta Team vanished from the tactical display as they flew directly into a needler swarm. By the time they reached 30,000 meters, 11 more Rangers were dead or incapacitated beyond recovery. 51 remaining. Mara fought the rising tide of memories, Marcus's drop, the garbled final transmission, the empty coffin at his memorial. Not now. Her team needed her focused. Present. "Prepare for Stage 2 descent," she ordered. "Deploy secondary wings on my mark." The Rangers jettisoned their primary stabilizers, entering another brief period of freefall before activating the more maneuverable, bat-like wings of their secondary systems. Now they could truly fly, darting between buildings and using the city's ruined infrastructure as cover against the continuing Skarathi attacks. "Ground teams detected," Mira reported. "Skarathi infantry forming a perimeter around the government district. Heavy weapons emplaced at all major approaches." "As expected," Mara replied. "Implement scatter protocol. Rendezvous at waypoint Omega." The Rangers broke apart completely, each taking an individual path toward their target. The tactic sacrificed the safety of numbers for the unpredictability of 51 separate insertion vectors, too many for the Skarathi to track effectively. Mara angled sharply around a half-collapsed residential tower, using her thrusters to execute a tight corkscrew maneuver that threw off 2 pursuing interceptors. They crashed into the building's facade, exploding in showers of chitin and biotechnical components. Her HUD showed her route to the rendezvous point, a service tunnel entrance 2 kilometers from the government district's main plaza. As she descended to rooftop level, a barrage of ground fire erupted from below. Skarathi soldiers, bipedal insectoids standing nearly 2 meters tall, with razor-sharp mandibles and multiple compound eyes, had spotted her and opened fire with their organic plasma casters. Globules of superheated matter splashed against the buildings around her as Mara jinked and weaved between them. One shot clipped her left wing, sending her into an uncontrolled spin. Gritting her teeth, Mara cut power to both wings and switched to pure thrust control, essentially transforming herself into a guided missile. She shot between 2 buildings so narrowly that her shoulders scraped the walls, leaving the Skarathi firing futilely at where she had been. The final approach to the rendezvous point required a steep vertical drop into a narrow maintenance shaft. Mara cut all thrust, tucked her limbs close to her body, and dropped like a stone. The shaft walls blurred past her, meters away on either side. At the last possible moment, she reactivated her thrusters at minimum power, slowing her descent just enough to land in a controlled crouch rather than as a splatter on the tunnel floor. The impact still drove the breath from her lungs and sent pain shooting through her knees despite the armor's shock absorption. As she straightened, Mara checked her tactical display. 37 life signs remained active at or approaching the rendezvous point. 37 out of 65. The Council would call it a massacre. The Rangers called it acceptable losses for a high-priority insertion. Lieutenant Mira was already there, along with Sergeant Rhee and 19 others. The rest were still inbound, evading Skarathi patrols or finding alternative routes after their planned approaches were compromised. "Status report," Mara demanded as she joined the group. "We've lost Gamma and Kilo teams completely," Mira replied, his face grim behind his faceplate. "Foxtrot is down to 2 members. The rest have at least 3 survivors per team." "Casualties at 43%, Rhee added. "Council observers are demanding we abort. They're claiming the mission is already a failure." Mara's jaw tightened. "The mission is a failure when I say it's a failure. Or when we're all dead. Until then, we proceed as planned." She activated the holographic map projector on her wrist. "Current location of surviving Ranger teams." The display showed their positions scattered across a 3-kilometer radius, with about half already at the rendezvous point and the others converging. And the bunker? Mara asked. Mira zoomed the map to show the government district's substructure. War room is here, 200 meters below the surface. Main access points are all compromised. Skarathi forces have them surrounded and are cutting through the reinforced doors. What about secondary access? Maintenance tunnels? Ventilation shafts? None that connect directly to the war room. It was designed to be isolated in case of emergency. Sergeant Rhee stepped forward, studying the map intently. Wait, what's this conduit here? She pointed to a narrow passage that ran parallel to the war room complex. Hydraulic control channel for the emergency blast doors, Mira replied, after consulting his datapad. Too small for personnel access, barely 20 centimeters in diameter. Perfect size for my shaped charges, Rhee said, a predatory grin spreading across her face. We blow a hole from the conduit into the war room, extract the personnel before the Skarathi realize what's happening. Mara considered the plan. Distance from our position? 1.7 kilometers through maintenance tunnels, Mira said. Heavy Skarathi presence along the route, but they're focused on the main access points. We could slip through with a small team, while the rest provide a diversion. More Rangers arrived as they discussed options, bringing their number to 29. The last 8 had either been killed or were too badly injured to reach the rendezvous point. Mara made her decision. Rhee, Mira, you're with me on the infiltration team. We'll take Foxtrot's survivors and the 3 from hotel team with the heaviest weapons loadout. The rest of you. Sergeant Daniels has tactical command. Your job is to make as much noise as possible at the main entrance to the government district. Draw their attention. Make them think we're mounting a frontal assault. That's a suicide mission, one of the Rangers muttered. This whole drop was a suicide mission according to the Council, Mara replied evenly. Yet, here we stand. We adapt. We overcome. We complete the objective. That's what Rangers do. She checked her weapon systems. Plasma rifle at 92% charge. Sidearm fully loaded. Vibro knife secured at her hip. Move out in 5 minutes. Sync comms to encrypted channel 7. As the Rangers prepared for the next phase, Mara pulled Lieutenant Mira aside. That rookie who didn't make it, Quan, was he one of yours? Mira's expression darkened. Trained him myself. First combat drop. He was good. Captain. Followed procedures perfectly. Just bad luck. There's no such thing as luck in a drop. Lieutenant, you know that. There's preparation, skill, and circumstances beyond our control. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Don't carry him with you into this next fight. It'll get you killed. Is that what you did with Marcus? Mira asked quietly. Just let him go? The question hit like a physical blow. Mara's hand dropped from his shoulder. We move in 4 minutes. Lieutenant, be ready. She turned away before he could see the emotion in her eyes, focusing instead on checking her equipment one final time. The maintenance tunnels beneath Silter's capital had been designed for automated repair drones, not humans in combat armor. The Rangers moved in single file, crouched low, their helmet lights cutting thin beams through the darkness. The walls were slick with condensation, the air heavy with the smell of corroded metal and something else, a musky, organic odor that all veterans recognized as the scent of Skarathi biotech. They've been through here, Mara whispered over the comm. Recently. Sergeant Rhee, taking point, held up a closed fist. The column halted immediately. Movement ahead, multiple signatures, moving away from our position. Mara switched her visor to thermal imaging. The tunnel ahead curved sharply to the right, but she could see the heat signatures of at least a dozen Skarathi soldiers moving perpendicular to their path, crossing a junction about 30 meters ahead. Patrol passing through the main service corridor, she observed. Once they're clear, we continue. Time check? "23 minutes until Daniels begins the diversion," Mira replied from his position at the rear of their formation. "We're on schedule, barely." They waited in tense silence until the Skarathi patrol passed. As they prepared to move forward again, a private from hotel team, Stevens, according to her IFF tag, spoke up. "Captain, something's wrong with the tunnel integrity ahead. My scanner's showing organic growth in the structure." Mara frowned. "Hold position." Stevens, "Details." "It's like the tunnel walls themselves are changing composition. Metal transitioning to some kind of chitinous material." "Skarathi modifications," Mira suggested. "They're converting the infrastructure to be compatible with their biotech." "Can we still get through?" Mara asked. Stevens studied her scanner. "The passage is clear, but I don't like these readings. The organic material seems to be responsive to stimuli, motion, heat, possibly sound. Meaning the tunnel itself might detect us," Ree concluded. "Precisely." Mara considered their options. Backtracking would cost precious time they didn't have. Alternate routes would take them too close to known Skarathi positions. Forward was the only viable direction. "We proceed with extreme caution," she decided. "Minimize contact with the walls. Move slowly. Single file. Weapons ready but safety's on. No accidental discharges." They advanced, now even more deliberate in their movements. The transformation of the tunnel became increasingly apparent as they progressed. Metal gave way to a substance that resembled hardened amber, translucent in places, with vein-like structures visible beneath the surface. The tunnel seemed to pulse subtly, as if breathing. "This is seriously creeping me out," one of the Foxtrot survivors muttered. "Focus," Mara ordered. 700 meters to the junction that will take us to the hydraulic conduit." A sudden tremor ran through the tunnel, causing everyone to freeze. The walls rippled, the veins pulsing more rapidly. "Nobody move," Ree hissed. The tunnel walls bulged inward, the amber-like substance becoming more flexible, more alive. Then, without warning, spines erupted from the ceiling, razor-sharp protrusions that shot downward with incredible speed. "Defensive positions!" Mara shouted, abandoning stealth as the tunnel itself attacked them. The Rangers pressed their backs to the floor, firing upward at the organic spines. Plasma bolts seared through the protrusions, sending gouts of viscous fluid raining down on their armor. The fluid sizzled on contact, eating through the outer layer of their protection. "It's the same compound as the Interceptor's venom," Mira called out. "Acid-based corrosive." Ree was already moving, placing small explosive charges at regular intervals along the tunnel floor. "Cover your heads," she yelled, triggering the detonator. The controlled explosions blasted through the floor, creating a ragged hole large enough for the Rangers to drop through. They fell one by one into a larger maintenance shaft below, the last one barely making it through before the tunnel above sealed itself closed. The wounded organic material regenerating at an alarming rate. "Everyone check for contamination," Mara ordered, scanning her team for injuries. 2 Rangers had sustained minor acid burns, where the fluid had found gaps in their armor, but their suits' medical systems were already neutralizing the compounds. "Where are we?" Mara asked, orienting herself using the 3D map projected in her HUD. Mira consulted his instruments. "Secondary waste reclamation tunnel. We're actually closer to our target now. 500 meters to the junction." "Silver linings," Ree said dryly. "Though I've got a feeling that wasn't the worst of it." She was right. As they moved deeper into the complex, evidence of Skarathi occupation became increasingly prevalent. The walls were covered in a clear, resin-like secretion that hardened into a protective shell. Organic light sources, bioluminescent sacs that pulsed with an eerie blue glow, had replaced the standard emergency lighting. Most disturbing were the cocoons they began to encounter, human-sized pods attached to the walls and ceiling, each containing the indistinct shape of what might once have been a person. Colonists, Stevens whispered, horrified. Or security personnel, Mira suggested grimly. The Skarathi don't waste potential resources. Keep moving, Mara ordered, though the sight made her stomach clench. We can't help them now. The diversion team's signal came precisely on schedule, a series of explosions that rocked the complex, followed by the distinctive sound of Ranger weapon fire echoing through the structure. Alarms blared throughout the tunnels, and they could hear the chittering communications of Skarathi soldiers responding to the attack. That's our cue, Mara said. Double time to the hydraulic conduit. They moved swiftly now, abandoning stealth for speed. Twice they encountered small groups of Skarathi rushing toward the diversion, dispatching them quickly with coordinated fire before they could alert others to the Rangers' presence. The junction that led to the hydraulic control system was guarded by a single Skarathi technician, a smaller subspecies with overdeveloped cranial structures that housed their enhanced processing centers. Ree eliminated it with a vibro knife to the neck before it could even turn around. Conduit access here. Mira indicated a maintenance panel set into the wall. But we've got a problem. The hydraulic system is active, pressurized fluid flowing through at high velocity. Can we shut it down? Mara asked. Not without alerting every Skarathi in the complex. The war room's defensive systems depend on this hydraulic pressure to keep the blast doors operational. Ree examined the panel, then reached into her equipment pouch for specialized tools. I can work with this. Give me 3 minutes to place the charges properly. They'll need to be precisely sequenced. Blow a hole in the conduit, divert the hydraulic fluid, then breach the war room wall before the pressure loss triggers alarms. You have 2 minutes, Mara replied, checking the tactical feed from the diversion team. They were sustaining heavy casualties, but maintaining the Skarathi's attention. Mira, what's the status of the war room? The lieutenant linked his sensors to the building's internal monitoring systems, bypassing Skarathi security protocols with practiced ease. 17 life signs, clustered in the central chamber. Atmosphere is stable, but power is fluctuating. They're running on emergency systems only. And the Skarathi presence? Heavy concentration outside the main doors. They've almost cut through the outer layer. I estimate 20 minutes before they breach the final defenses. Ree worked quickly, her hand steady despite the pressure. Charges set. Optimal position for breaching is here. She marked a spot on their tactical display. We'll have approximately 12 seconds between the initial conduit breach and the wall explosion before the pressure loss triggers automated alarms. Understood. Mara turned to the Rangers. Stevens, you and Daniels hold this position. The rest of us go through. Once we have the council personnel, we'll need to move fast to the extraction point. About that extraction, Mira said hesitantly. The original plan assumed we'd have air support from Aquila Sovereign. Given our casualties and the intensity of Skarathi air defenses, we adapt, Mara stated firmly. There's a secondary landing pad on the roof of the auxiliary communications building, 800 meters northeast of our position. Less defended because it's smaller. Can only accommodate 1 shuttle at a time. I'll alert what's left of the diversion team to secure that area. Mira nodded, already sending the coded transmission. Ready when you are, Captain, Ree reported, her finger poised over the detonator. Mara checked her weapon one last time. Execute. The first explosion was barely audible, a muffled thump followed by the hiss of escaping hydraulic fluid. Ree's specialized charges had penetrated the conduit wall while simultaneously creating a bypass channel that maintained pressure to the critical systems. 10 seconds, she counted down, leading the team into position beside the section of wall that separated them from the war room. Mara could feel her heartbeat, steady despite the adrenaline. This was the moment everything hinged on, the difference between success and failure, between life and death, between proving human methods valid or becoming another statistic in the Council's records. 3, 2, 1. Breach. The shaped charge detonated with precision, blasting a hole through the reinforced wall just large enough for an armored ranger to pass through. Before the dust had even settled, Mara was moving, diving through the opening with her weapon raised. The war room was vast, a circular chamber dominated by a holographic tactical display in its center. Emergency lighting cast everything in a red glow, highlighting the faces of the stunned Council personnel who had obviously not expected rescue to come through the walls. But something was wrong. The faces that turned toward Mara weren't just surprised, they were vacant, their eyes glassy and unfocused. And arrayed around the central holographic pedestal were the bodies of what appeared to be the highest-ranking officials, including the distinctive form of a Vrexian who could only be the High Chancellor. "Captain!" Mira shouted in warning as he came through the breach behind her. "Psychic intrusion detected. This is a trap." Too late. The holographic display flickered and transformed, reshaping itself into the towering form of a Skarathi queen, nearly 4 meters tall, with an elongated head crest and multiple limbs that ended in both manipulator appendages and vicious natural weapons. Her compound eyes gleamed with malevolent intelligence. "Humans!" The Queen's voice reverberated not through the air but directly in their minds. So predictable in your heroism, so easily manipulated by your concern for others. The vacant-eyed council staff moved with jerky, puppet-like motions to surround the Rangers. Now Mara could see the small, spider-like parasites attached to the backs of their necks, psychic amplifiers that allowed the Queen to control them remotely. "You are too late," the Queen continued. "The leaders of your precious council were the first to fall to our new neurolinkage technology. Their knowledge, their secrets, their authorization codes, all now part of the Skarathi collective." Mara signaled her team to hold fire. Any shots would hit the controlled hostages, not the holographic Queen. "Where are you?" Mara demanded. "Show yourself physically, if you're so confident of victory." The Queen's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. "I am kilometers from here, safe within my hive fortress. This projection allows me to oversee the final stages of Siltar's transformation." "The final stages?" Mira questioned, his sensor suite working overtime to analyze the situation. "This world will become a psychic amplifier without equal, a beacon that will extend our collective consciousness across 12 sectors. Every sentient being within range will join our perfect unity." Mara noticed something as the Queen spoke, a subtle pulsing beneath the floor, synchronized with the fluctuations in the hologram's intensity. Following her instincts, she activated her armor's ground-penetrating sensors. "The neurolinkage core," she realized aloud. "It's directly beneath us." The Queen's projection flickered momentarily. Perceptive, for a primitive species. "Yes, the core that powers our psychic network is beneath this chamber, protected by meters of reinforced material and the most powerful minds of my brood." "Captain," Ree whispered over a private channel, "I still have charges. If we can reach the core—" "You consider destruction," the Queen interrupted, proving she could intercept even their secure communications. "A futile thought. Even now, your diversionary force is being overwhelmed. Your orbiting vessel has lost contact with 60% of your warriors. The Council will disavow your mission as the failure it is." The Queen leaned forward, her projected form seeming to fill the chamber. "I offer you a choice. Captain Mara Kincaid, surrender yourself to the linkage, Become my emissary to humanity. Your species will be incorporated gently, with minimal suffering, preserved as valuable components of our collective. Refuse, and watch as I execute these council members one by one before destroying you and your team. As if to emphasize her point, one of the controlled staff, a young Vrexian female, stepped forward and drew a vibroblade, holding it to her own throat. Mara's mind raced. The Queen knew her name, which meant she had access to council personnel files. The psychic network was clearly more extensive than intelligence had indicated. But every network had a central node, a vulnerable point. "Lieutenant," Mara said calmly, "what's powering the holographic projector?" Mira, catching on to her thinking, scanned the pedestal. "Quantum interface, drawing power from—" "Yes, directly from the neural core beneath us. It's a two-way connection." "Meaning?" "Meaning it's not just projecting the Queen's image, it's channeling her consciousness. She's not just communicating. Part of her mind is literally here." The Queen hissed, a sound of genuine alarm. "Enough! Your decision! Captain! Join us, or watch them die." Mara lowered her weapon slightly, not surrendering, but shifting her stance to allow her to access the specialized compartment on her armor's thigh. Inside was an item rarely used, but carried by all Ranger captains, a quantum destabilizer, designed to disrupt the most advanced energy fields. "Before I decide," Mara said, playing for time, "I want to know what happened to the real council generals. The bodies here, are they dead, or just more of your puppets?" "They resisted the linkage," the Queen replied, a note of something like respect in her psychic voice. "Their minds were too rigid, too set in their ways to accept our gift. Their bodies failed before their will broke. So they died, rather than join you." Mara took a step toward the holographic pedestal. Interesting that the mighty Skarathi collective couldn't overcome the stubbornness of a few old politicians. The Queen's projection grew larger, more threatening. "Their resistance was futile, as is yours. The linkage merely takes longer with some subjects. In the end, all minds join the collective." "Maybe," Mara conceded, taking another step forward. "Or maybe some ideas are stronger than any psychic network, like duty, sacrifice, freedom." She locked eyes with Ree and Mira, a silent communication passing between them based on years of working together. They understood immediately, shifting their positions subtly to cover her approach to the pedestal. "Your time expires. Human," the Queen declared. "Choose now." Mara's hand closed around the quantum destabilizer. "I choose option 3. With a swift motion, she slammed the device against the pedestal's control interface. Blue-white energy crackled outward, disrupting the holographic field and causing the Queen's image to fragment into shards of light. But more importantly, it created a feedback surge down the connection to the neural core. The Queen's psychic scream tore through their minds, momentarily incapacitating everyone in the chamber. The controlled staff collapsed like marionettes with cut strings, the psychic amplifiers on their necks withering and falling away. "Ree!" Mara shouted as soon as she could speak. "The floor! Now!" The demolitions expert was already moving, placing her remaining charges in a circular pattern around the central area of the chamber. "Clear the blast radius," she ordered, pushing the dazed council personnel toward the walls. "Mira, get these people ready to move," Mara commanded. "Once we blow the core, we'll have minutes at most before this whole complex comes down." The lieutenant nodded, already organizing the disoriented staff members. "What about the Queen? Is she dead?" "Wounded, not killed," Mara replied grimly. The feedback would have caused significant psychic trauma, but a being that powerful won't be eliminated so easily. As if to confirm her assessment, The remaining functional displays in the war room began to flicker, showing the same message repeated in multiple languages. You will join us. Charges set, Ree reported. Timer or remote? Remote, Mara decided. We need to be flexible on timing. Everyone out through the breach. Move! The Rangers herded the Council personnel through the hole in the wall, back into the maintenance tunnel. As Mara prepared to follow, a violent tremor shook the chamber. Cracks appeared in the floor, spreading outward from the central pedestal. She's trying to protect the core, Mira realized, rerouting power to structural reinforcement. Another, stronger tremor hit, causing part of the ceiling to collapse between Mara and the breach. She was cut off from the rest of the team. Captain! Ree shouted from the other side of the debris. Get them out, Mara ordered. I'll find another way. There is no other way. Mira's voice came through the comm. The schematics show no other exits from the war room. It was designed as a last-stand defensive position. Mara looked at the detonator in her hand, then at the charges placed around the central floor section. The neural core was directly beneath her feet, the heart of the Skarathi psychic network on Siltar 4. Destroying it would cripple their control over the planet, potentially saving millions of lives across multiple systems if the Queen's plan for expansion was real. But the only way to ensure the core's destruction now was to trigger the charges while still in the chamber. Ree, what's the blast radius on those charges? Mara asked, her voice steady. A pause. 15 meters. Minimum. Captain, don't even think about it. Get the Council personnel to the extraction point. That's an order. Mara. Mira's voice was uncharacteristically informal, urgent. We can find another way. Give me time to calculate an alternative approach. There is no time. Jovan. She used his first name deliberately, acknowledging what they both knew. The Queen is already recovering. I can feel her trying to get back into my mind. It was true. A pressure was building in Mara's head, a foreign presence scratching at the edges of her consciousness. The displays around the room were showing increasing power levels, the neural network rebuilding itself, adapting to the damage she'd caused. The mission comes first, she reminded them. The Rangers complete the objective, whatever the cost. Get those people out. Prove to the Council that our methods work. Another section of ceiling collapsed, narrowly missing her. The floor beneath her feet was growing warm, energy surging through the neural core as it attempted to restore full functionality. Captain, Ree began. That's an order. Sergeant, move out! A final tremor shook the chamber as Mara heard her team reluctantly retreating, taking the Council personnel with them. She checked her armor's integrity, compromised in several places from the earlier fighting, but still operational. The charges Ree had placed were exactly where they needed to be to breach the floor and destroy the core beneath. Mara positioned herself near the heaviest concentration of explosives. Her finger hovered over the detonator as she accessed her helmet's communication system one last time. Rangers of the 105th, this is Captain Kincaid. Mission status. Council personnel secured. En route to extraction. Neural core targeting complete. Prepare for network disruption on my mark. She paused, then added more softly. It has been my highest honor to serve with you. Air we own. Her finger was just pressing the detonator when the debris blocking the breach exploded outward. Lieutenant Mira charged through the newly cleared opening, his armor scorched from the controlled explosion he'd used to create a path. With respect, Captain, he said, grabbing her arm. I didn't train 6 years under your command to leave you behind. This isn't up for debate. Lieutenant, the core has to be destroyed. Agreed, but not at the cost of your life. He tapped the side of his helmet, activating a specialized scanner. The core's main power conduits run along this path. He indicated a route on his HUD. If we place a charge here instead of on the floor, We can trigger a cascade failure without being directly over the core when it blows. Mara hesitated. That's theoretical. We need certainty. Nothing's certain in a drop, Mira countered, using her own words against her. But I calculated an 83% probability of success, with a survivable escape window of approximately 47 seconds. Another psychic assault hit them both, stronger this time. The Queen was recovering quickly, her rage palpable even through the weakened connection. 47 seconds, Mara repeated. That's cutting it close, Lieutenant. Close enough to work, far enough to survive, he replied with grim determination. Marcus would have made the same call. The mention of her brother should have angered her, but instead, it crystallized Mara's thoughts. Marcus had died because he'd had no options, no way out. She did. A narrow path, but a path nonetheless. Reset the charges, she ordered. You have 30 seconds. Mira moved with practiced efficiency, retrieving Rhee's explosives and repositioning them along the power conduit he'd identified. As he worked, the psychic pressure intensified. Displays around the room shattered as the Queen's rage manifested physically. Done, Mira announced, stepping back from the newly placed charges. Remote is synced to your detonator. Then let's move. Mara led the way to the breach, pausing at the opening. You first. Lieutenant. I'll be right behind you. Mira hesitated, clearly suspicious of her intentions. That's an order, she added firmly. Someone needs to guide the rest of the team if I don't make it. With obvious reluctance, Mira squeezed through the breach into the tunnel beyond. The moment he was clear, Mara pressed the detonator. The explosion was more violent than she'd anticipated. The floor buckled and warped as the charges destroyed the power conduit, triggering the promised cascade failure in the neural core. Energy discharges shot through the chamber like lightning, shattering equipment and melting metal. Mara dove through the breach as the floor finally gave way entirely, collapsing into the space below. A wave of superheated air followed her, singeing the back of her armor despite its protective layers. Mira grabbed her arm, pulling her fully into the tunnel as the war room imploded behind them. 47 seconds, he reminded her with grim satisfaction. Now we run. They sprinted through the maintenance tunnels, following the evacuation route Mira had plotted. The entire complex was shaking, structural integrity compromised by the destruction of the neural core. Alarms blared from all directions, almost drowned out by the sound of collapsing sections. Most importantly, the psychic pressure was gone, the Queen's connection severed, at least temporarily. Team status? Mara demanded as they ran. Rhee has the Council personnel at Junction 7, 300 meters ahead. Mira reported between breaths. Diversion team is down to 11 operational rangers, converging on the extraction point. Aquila Sovereign reports Skarathi air defenses are in disarray. They're preparing a shuttle launch to the secondary landing pad. They reached Junction 7 to find Rhee and the others waiting. The Council staff looking terrified, but alive. Governor Elenis, a tall Iridian with silvery skin, stepped forward as Mara approached. Captain Kincaid, she acknowledged with a formal bow. It appears we owe you our lives. Save the thanks for when we're off this rock. Governor, can everyone move at speed? We will keep up, the governor assured her, straightening to her full height. Lead the way. The journey to the extraction point was a blur of collapsing tunnels, emergency bulkheads, and occasional skirmishes with disorganized Skarathi patrols. Without their psychic network, the insectoids were fighting as individuals rather than a coordinated force, still dangerous, but far less effective. They emerged onto the surface through a maintenance hatch near the auxiliary communications building. The acid rain had temporarily abated, though the yellow clouds above still churned ominously. Across the devastated plaza, they could see the diversion team holding position around the small landing pad, exchanging fire with Skarathi forces, attempting to retake the area. "Final push," Mara ordered, checking the ammunition in her plasma rifle. "Rangers in front and rear, council personnel in the center, move on my signal." She was about to give the order when her comm unit crackled with an incoming transmission from Aquila Sovereign. "Captain Kincaid, this is Liaison Viren Tall. The shuttle cannot launch. Repeat. Extraction is scrubbed. A Skarathi hive ship has entered orbit and is moving to intercept." Mara felt a cold knot form in her stomach. Understood. Liaison. Alternative options. "The Sovereign will engage the hive ship to buy you time, but without extraction." The Vrexian's voice trailed off, the implication clear. "Acknowledged." Mara switched to the team frequency. "Change of plans. No shuttle. We need to find alternative transport off-world." Governor Alenis stepped forward. "Captain, there is a diplomatic vessel in the underground hangar beneath the Treasury building. It has stealth capabilities and enough range to reach the nearest council outpost." "Distance to the Treasury building?" Mara asked Mira. 1.2 kilometers southeast. Heavy Skarathi activity reported in that sector. Mara weighed their options. The Rangers were down to barely 30 operational members, with limited ammunition and damaged armor. The council personnel were exhausted, some injured, but the alternative was waiting for a shuttle that would never come. "New objective," she announced. "Treasury building hangar. Take point with Foxtrot team. Mira, coordinate with the diversion team to secure our route. Move out." They advanced through the ruined city, using collapsed buildings and debris for cover. The destruction of the neural core had clearly affected the Skarathi, beyond just their coordination. Some seemed disoriented, while others fought with increased ferocity, as if driven by desperation rather than tactical thinking. 3 more Rangers fell during the journey, their lives purchased with meters of ground gained. Mara felt each loss like a physical wound, adding their names to the mental list she carried of those who had died under her command. The Treasury building loomed ahead, its once grand facade now pitted and scored by weapons fire. The main entrance was heavily guarded by Skarathi soldiers, who seemed more organized than the others they'd encountered. "They're protecting something important," Mira observed, probably aware of the diplomatic vessel. "Options?" Mara asked, surveying the defenses. Ree pointed to a partially collapsed section of the building's eastern wing. "Structural weakness there. One well-placed charge could create an alternative entrance." "Do it." While Ree prepared the explosive, Mara turned to the council personnel. "Once we're inside, stay close. The hangar will likely be our most heavily contested objective yet." Governor Alenis nodded, her expression resolute. "My staff and I may not be warriors, Captain, but we are not helpless. Several of us have basic combat training. If you can spare weapons, we can assist in our own rescue." Mara considered the request, then nodded. "Mira, distribute sidearms to any council member with training. Basic instructions only. We don't have time for a crash course." The charge detonated with a thunderous boom, collapsing part of the eastern wall and creating a jagged opening into the Treasury building. Before the dust had even settled, the Rangers were moving, flooding through the breach with weapons ready. The interior was a maze of grand halls and administrative offices, most now repurposed by the Skarathi for their own uses. They encountered resistance immediately, guards responding to the explosion. But the element of surprise gave the Rangers the advantage in the initial exchange. "Hangar access," Mara demanded as they secured the first chamber. "Central elevator shaft, 2 levels down," Governor Alenis replied, pointing toward a corridor branching off to their right. Executive override codes will be needed for the security systems. Which I assume you have. The governor's silver lips curved in a tight smile. I am still the governor of this world. Captain, the systems recognize my biometric signature. They fought their way to the elevator shaft, a running battle that depleted their already limited ammunition. By the time they reached the massive doors that protected the shaft, the Rangers were down to conservation protocols, single shots, carefully placed. Governor Elenis placed her hand on a scanner beside the doors. For a tense moment, nothing happened. Then a series of lights flashed green, and the heavy doors began to slide apart. The systems are operational, she said with obvious relief. The Skarathi have not yet compromised this level of security. Don't get too comfortable, Mara warned. They'll know exactly where we're headed now. The elevator itself was a large platform designed for cargo as well as personnel. As they descended, Mara organized their remaining forces. 23 Rangers still combat effective, plus 14 Council personnel with minimal training and borrowed weapons, against unknown Skarathi numbers in an enclosed space, with their extraction vehicle as the only way off-world. This is going to be close, Mira murmured beside her. It always is, Mara replied. That's why they send us. The elevator slowed as it approached the hangar level. Mara could feel the familiar pre-combat calm settling over her, the moment of perfect clarity before chaos erupted. Weapons ready, she ordered. Standard breach protocol. Secure the vessel first. Worry about hostiles second. The doors opened to reveal the hangar, a vast space filled with maintenance equipment, fuel containers, and various small craft. In the center sat what could only be the diplomatic vessel, a sleek, silver ship about 30 meters long, with no visible weapons, but an unmistakable elegance that spoke of advanced technology. It was also surrounded by at least 50 Skarathi soldiers, with more visible on the gantries above. Well, Rhys said dryly, they definitely knew we were coming. Before Mara could issue orders, a familiar psychic presence slammed into her mind, weaker than before, but unmistakable. Captain Kincaid. The Queen's voice resonated in her thoughts. You have caused me considerable inconvenience. The neural core will take months to rebuild. Sorry to hear that, Mara replied aloud, causing her team to look at her in confusion. Maybe you should reconsider your invasion plans. Your defiance is noted, but ultimately irrelevant. You face impossible odds. Surrender now, and I will allow the council members to leave. Resist, and none will survive. Mara felt the Queen probing at her thoughts, searching for weaknesses, pressure points. She allowed a single memory to surface. Marcus, during their last conversation before his fatal drop, smiling with the confidence of youth. You still grieve for your brother, the Queen observed. His death was pointless, unnecessary. Join us, and you will understand that death itself is merely a transition. His essence could be recovered, recreated within the collective. Nice try, Mara thought back. But Marcus would rather stay dead than become one of your drones, as would I. She severed the psychic connection with a mental technique she'd learned after years of encountering Skarathi mind probes, visualizing a door slamming shut, followed by a series of locks engaging. Rangers, she addressed her team. We have one shot at this. The ship is our objective. Everything else is secondary. Governor, can you remote start the vessel's engines? Elenis nodded. Yes, with the command console at the main hangar control station. She pointed to an elevated platform on the far side of the hangar. Mira, take 3 Rangers and get the governor to that console. Rhi, you're with me. We're going to create a path to the ship. The rest of you, suppressive fire on my mark. Mara removed her last 2 grenades from her belt. Once those engines start, Every Skarathi in this hangar is going to converge on the ship. We'll have seconds, not minutes, to get everyone aboard. She took a deep breath, mentally calculating trajectories, timing, variables. The odds were terrible, but Rangers didn't care about odds. 3, 2, 1, mark! The elevator doors, which had remained partially open during this exchange, now exploded outward as Ree triggered a shaped charge, placed while Mara was communicating with the Queen. The debris scythed through the nearest Skarathi, creating momentary confusion. Rangers poured out of the elevator, firing in coordinated patterns that maximized coverage while conserving ammunition. Mira's team broke left, escorting Governor Alenis toward the control station, while Mara and Ree charged straight ahead toward the diplomatic vessel. The Skarathi recovered quickly, returning fire with their biological weapons. Globules of superheated plasma scorched the hangar floor and walls, while acidic projectiles hissed through the air. 2 Rangers fell in the first exchange, their armor insufficient against the concentrated barrage. Mara threw her grenades in quick succession, one to the left and one to the right of their approach vector. The explosion scattered the Skarathi defensive line, creating a temporary gap that she and Ree exploited, sprinting toward the ship. Distance to target, 15 meters. Mara's HUD informed her. Behind her, the battle raged as Rangers provided covering fire, their discipline evident in the methodical way they engaged targets despite being outnumbered. Across the hangar, Mira's team had reached the control station. Governor Alenis was working at the console, her silver fingers moving with surprising speed across the interface. A moment later, the diplomatic vessel hummed to life, its engines powering up with a low, building whine. 10 meters to target. The HUD updated. Mara and Ree were almost at the ship when a massive Skarathi warrior, nearly twice the size of the others, with reinforced exoskeletal plating, landed directly in their path, having jumped from a gantry above. The brute swung a massive, club-like limb at Ree, who barely ducked in time. Mara fired her plasma rifle point-blank into the creature's abdomen, but the reinforced exoskeleton absorbed much of the impact. The Skarathi staggered, but didn't fall. "Go!" Ree shouted, tackling the brute from the side. "Get to the ship!" Mara hesitated for a split second before combat instinct took over. The mission came first. She vaulted over the grappling figures, landing in a roll that carried her the remaining distance to the ship's access ramp. The vessel's external lights were now fully illuminated, its engines reaching operational temperature. Mara accessed the external control panel, overriding the standard security protocols with emergency measures Governor Alenis had provided. The ramp lowered with excruciating slowness. Across the hangar, Mira's team was falling back from the control station, returning fire as they retreated toward the ship. Governor Alenis was with them, protected in the center of their formation. Mara turned back to where she'd left Ree, only to see the demolitions expert still wrestling with the Skarathi brute. As she watched, Ree managed to attach something to the creature's thorax, a small device that Mara recognized with horror as a personal detonator. "Ree, don't," she began over the comm. "Tell them it was worth it. Captain." Ree's voice came back, strained but determined. "Air we own." The explosion tore through the Skarathi brute and Sergeant Ree alike, the specialized charge designed to penetrate the toughest armor, proving equally effective against exoskeleton and ranger protection. The shockwave knocked several nearby Skarathi off their feet, creating a momentary lull in the onslaught. Mara allowed herself 1 second, 1 single second, to acknowledge the loss before returning to the mission. "All Rangers, converge on the ship, boarding protocols in effect." The ramp was fully extended now, the ship's automated systems recognizing the emergency situation and expediting the process. Mara positioned herself at the base, providing covering fire as her team fell back toward the extraction point. Mira's group reached her first. Governor Alenis and the other council personnel moving quickly up the ramp, while the lieutenant and his rangers maintained a defensive perimeter. "Ree?" Mira asked as he took position beside Mara. She shook her head once, sharply. "Covering our retreat." Understanding passed between them, along with shared grief that would have to wait until later, if there was a later. The remaining rangers were falling back in staggered formation, maintaining suppressive fire while moving in alternating groups. It was textbook procedure, executed with the precision that came from countless drills and real-world experience. "Engine status," Mara called to Governor Alenis, who had taken position at the ship's external control panel. 93% and rising, the governor replied. "We need at least 95 for emergency launch protocols." The last group of rangers was 20 meters out when the hangar doors at the far end began to open. Through the widening gap, Mara could see a massive shape moving, a Skarathi warform, one of their living tanks. "Everyone on board, now!" she shouted. "Forget protocol, just move!" The rangers abandoned their measured retreat, sprinting the final distance to the ship. Plasma bolts and acid projectiles followed them, several finding their marks. 3 more rangers fell, their armor breached by the concentrated fire. "Engine status?" Mara demanded again, firing her nearly depleted plasma rifle at the advancing Skarathi. 95.2%, Governor Alenis reported. "Minimum launch capability achieved." "Close the ramp as soon as the last ranger is aboard," Mara ordered, backing up the ramp while maintaining fire. "Mira, get to the bridge and prepare for immediate departure." The lieutenant hesitated. "Captain." "That's an order, Lieutenant. I'll be right behind you." This time, Mira complied, racing up the ramp and into the ship's interior. The warform was fully visible now, its massive armored bulk advancing across the hangar floor. Biological weapon emplacements on its carapace were swiveling to target the diplomatic vessel. The last ranger made it to the ramp, dragging a wounded comrade. Mara helped pull them aboard, then turned to Governor Alenis. "Close it and launch!" "Captain, you must come inside first," the governor insisted. "No time," Mara countered, firing at the nearest Skarathi troops. "That warform has enough firepower to cripple this ship if it gets a clean shot. Launch now, while we still have distance." Governor Alenis hesitated, then nodded once, her silver features set in grim determination. She pressed a sequence on the control panel, and the ramp began to rise. Mara continued firing until the last possible moment, then dove through the narrowing gap as the ramp sealed behind her. She landed hard on the deck, her armor absorbing most of the impact. "We're clear!" she shouted. "Launch!" The diplomatic vessel's engines roared to full power, lifting the ship from the hangar floor. Through a viewing port, Mara could see the warform opening fire, but they were already moving, accelerating toward the hangar's external doors. "Hold on!" Mira's voice came over the ship's comm system. "This isn't going to be a gentle exit." The vessel shot forward, smashing through the external doors rather than waiting for them to open fully. Metal screamed against metal as they tore free of the hangar, rocketing into Siltar's toxic atmosphere. Mara pulled herself to her feet and made her way to the bridge, passing wounded rangers being tended to by council medical staff. Of the 65 who had made the initial drop, fewer than 20 remained. The cost had been brutal, but the mission was nearly complete. On the bridge, Mira was at the pilot station, his fingers dancing across unfamiliar controls with remarkable adaptability. Governor Alenis occupied the co-pilot's seat, providing guidance and authorization codes as needed. "Status?" Mara asked, taking position behind them. "Breaking atmosphere in 30 seconds, Mira reported. "The ship's stealth systems are engaged. but we're reading multiple Skarathi vessels in pursuit. The Aquila Sovereign is engaging the hive ship in high orbit, creating a diversion to cover our escape. Mara watched the tactical display as they ascended through Siltar's roiling clouds. The Sovereign was indeed in combat, exchanging fire with a massive Skarathi hive ship. Despite being heavily outgunned, the Council vessel was maneuvering brilliantly, keeping the Skarathi occupied while their smaller ship slipped past the engagement zone. "Calculate jump coordinates to the nearest Council outpost," Mara ordered. "As soon as we're clear of the gravity well, make the jump." "Already plotted," Governor Elenis confirmed. "Approximate jump time, 3 minutes, 17 seconds. The ship shuddered as they broke through the upper atmosphere into space. Behind them, Siltar 4 receded, its yellow surface marred by the scars of Skarathi occupation. Ahead, the stars beckoned. Safety. If they could reach jump distance before being intercepted. "Multiple contacts closing," Mira warned. "Skarathi pursuit craft, moving to cut off our escape vector." "Can we outrun them?" Mara asked. Governor Elenis consulted the ship's systems. This vessel was designed for speed and stealth, not combat. If they don't detect us. Yes. If they've already locked onto our signature. They have, Mira confirmed grimly. 3 vessels on direct intercept course. Time to contact. 45 seconds. Mara studied the tactical display, noting the positions of all ships in the vicinity. An idea formed. Desperate. Risky. But with a slim chance of success. "Adjust course," she ordered. "Head directly toward the battle between Sovereign and the hive ship." Both Mira and Governor Elenis looked at her in shock. "Captain," the governor protested, "that would take us into the heaviest concentration of enemy fire." "Exactly. They're not expecting us to fly into the danger zone. The confusion of the battle will mask our signature, and the hive ship will be reluctant to fire on its own pursuit craft." Mira understood immediately. Using the battle as cover to slip past their blockade, it could work. "It's our only chance," Mara insisted. "Adjust course now, before those interceptors reach us." The diplomatic vessel banked sharply, its powerful engines pushing it toward the raging space battle ahead. On the tactical display, the Skarathi pursuit craft adjusted to follow, but their new course was taking them directly into the firing zone between Sovereign and the hive ship. "Incoming transmission from Aquila Sovereign," Governor Elenis reported. "It's Liaison Viren Toll." "Put him through," Mara said. The Vrexian's face appeared on the main screen, his normally composed features taut with tension. "Captain Kincaid, what madness is this? You're flying directly into our engagement zone." "Using your battle as cover, liaison," Mara explained quickly. "Can you adjust your firing patterns to create a corridor at coordinates Alpha 37? There was a moment of hesitation before understanding dawned in the liaison's eyes. Unconventional to the end. "Captain." "Very well. We will adjust our attack vector to create your corridor. Be advised. We can maintain this adjustment for approximately 20 seconds before the hive ship repositions. 20 seconds is all we need. Prepare to execute on my mark." Mara watched the tactical display as they approached the battle zone. The Sovereign was maneuvering with impressive precision, drawing the hive ship's fire in a specific pattern that would create a momentary safe passage near the coordinates she'd specified. "Distance to corridor?" she asked Mira. 30 seconds at current velocity, he replied. "Skarathi pursuit craft still on our tail, closing the gap." "Governor, divert all non-essential power to engines and stealth systems. We need to thread this needle perfectly." Governor Elenis complied, her silver fingers adjusting controls with practiced efficiency. The ship surged forward, its acceleration pressing them back into their seats. "Mark, Mara commanded as they reached the optimal position. On the tactical display, the Sovereign executed a sharp turn, unleashing a barrage of weapons fire that forced the hive ship to adjust its defensive screens. The movement created a temporary gap in the Skarathi defenses, a narrow corridor of relatively clear space. "Full power!" Mara ordered. "Take us through!" The diplomatic vessel shot forward, threading the gap between the battling titans. Energy weapons and biological projectiles crisscrossed space around them, some passing close enough to make the shields flare. Behind them, one of the pursuit craft was caught in crossfire and exploded, while the others scattered to avoid a similar fate. "Corridor collapsing," Mira reported tensely. 10 seconds to clear the combat zone. Those 10 seconds stretched like an eternity, each moment pregnant with the possibility of destruction. A glancing hit from a stray shot could disable their engines. A direct hit would vaporize the ship entirely. 5 seconds. 3. 1. "Clear," Mira announced as they broke free of the combat zone. "Jump calculations finalizing. Ready in 10 seconds. On the tactical display, the remaining Skarathi pursuit craft were regrouping, attempting to reacquire their target. The hive ship had detected their maneuver and was trying to reposition to cut them off. But the Sovereign was keeping it occupied with relentless attacks. "Jump ready," Governor Alenis confirmed. "Executing in 3, 2, 1. The stars streaked and blurred as the diplomatic vessel entered jump space, leaving Siltar 4 and its Skarathi invaders behind. The bridge fell silent, except for the hum of engines and the occasional beep of monitoring systems. Mara allowed herself to exhale, tension draining from her body. They had made it. The mission, against all odds, against the Council's expectations, against the Skarathi's overwhelming force, was a success. Estimated arrival at Council Outpost Thera 9, 4 hours, 17 minutes, Governor Alenis reported, breaking the silence. Mira looked up at Mara, his expression a mixture of exhaustion and pride. "What now, Captain?" "Now," Mara replied, "we tend to our wounded, honor our dead, and prepare our report." She glanced at Governor Alenis. "I trust the Council will receive a complete account of today's events." The governor's silver lips curved in a small smile. "Rest assured, Captain Kincaid, my report will detail exactly how the 105th Human Skyborne Rangers accomplished what the Council's conventional forces could not. Your methods, while unorthodox by our standards, have proven their worth beyond question." "High praise," Mara observed, considering how the Council viewed us before the drop. "Results speak for themselves," Governor Alenis replied simply. "And in war, results are what matter." Mara nodded, then turned to leave the bridge. "I need to check on my Rangers. Lieutenant, you have the con." As she walked through the ship, Mara paused at a viewport, gazing back at the shrinking battle they had left behind. Somewhere out there, the Sovereign was still fighting, buying them time to escape. Somewhere on Siltar 4, Sergeant Rhee and 44 other Rangers lay dead or dying, casualties of a mission deemed impossible by the very people they'd saved. "Air we own," she whispered to the darkness, a final salute to those left behind. The ship's medical bay had been transformed into a makeshift field hospital. Rangers with training in emergency medicine worked alongside the Council staff's physicians, treating plasma burns, acid exposure, and trauma injuries. Despite their exhaustion, the surviving Rangers maintained discipline, assisting where they could and keeping morale steady. Mara moved among them, stopping to speak with each wounded soldier, offering encouragement or simply acknowledging their sacrifice with a nod or touch on the shoulder. These moments, the quiet aftermath of combat, were as important to leadership as the tactical decisions made during the heat of battle. Private Stevens from Hotel Team was sitting on an examination table, her right arm immobilized in a regeneration sleeve. "Captain," she acknowledged as Mara approached. "Stevens, how bad?" "Third-degree plasma burn, some nerve damage. Doctor says I'll keep the arm, but might lose some fine motor control." She managed a tight smile. Small price to pay for getting out alive. Mara nodded. "You did well today. That warning about the tunnel integrity probably saved half the team. Just following training." "Ma'am." Stevens hesitated, then asked the question Mara knew was coming. "Sergeant Rhee, is she really gone?" "She is. She saved us all." Mara kept her voice steady, refusing to let the grief show. There would be time for that later. In private. Her sacrifice won't be forgotten. Stevens bowed her head. "She taught my demolition certification course, said I had decent instincts for someone so determined to blow herself up." A sad laugh escaped her. "Guess she took her own advice in the end." "That's how Rhee would have wanted it," Mara agreed, "on her own terms." She continued through the bay, checking on each ranger until she reached the far corner where the most severely wounded had been placed. Among them was Corporal Takeda, one of Foxtrot Team's survivors. The medical scanners above his bed showed critical life signs, his body fighting to recover from massive trauma. The council physician attending him, a Taraxi with 6 arms and translucent skin through which Mara could see the movement of internal organs, looked up as she approached. "Captain Kincaid," he greeted her. "Corporal Takeda's condition is stabilizing, but he will require extensive reconstruction upon our arrival at Thera 9. "Will he make it that long?" Mara asked bluntly. "His armor's integrated medical systems have placed him in stasis. It is the only thing keeping him alive." The physician's tone was clinical, but not unkind. "Your human technology is surprisingly effective for its relative simplicity." Another backhanded compliment from a council representative, under normal circumstances. Mara might have bristled at the condescension, but today she simply lacked the energy for indignation. "Thank you for your efforts, Doctor," she said instead. "For all of them." "It is my duty," the physician replied. "Though I must admit, I did not expect to be treating so many survivors. The Council's strategic assessment gave your mission less than a 7% chance of success, with projected survival rates below 2%. Mara raised an eyebrow. "And yet here we are." "Indeed. It is educational to have one's assumptions challenged." The Taraxi physician returned his attention to Takeda's monitors, but added, "Perhaps there is merit in the human approach after all." It was as close to an admission of error as she was likely to get from a council official. Mara accepted it with a nod and moved on, completing her rounds before heading back toward the bridge. She was halfway there when Lieutenant Mira's voice came over the ship-wide comm. "Captain Kincaid to the communications center. Priority channel incoming." The communications center was a small room adjacent to the bridge, designed for secure transmissions and equipped with quantum encryption technology. When Mara entered, Mira was already there, along with Governor Elenis. "What's happening?" Mara asked. "Message from Galactic Council High Command," Mira explained. "They're requesting direct communication with you." That was unexpected. High Command rarely concerned itself with field operations, especially those involving human units. "Put them through," Mara instructed, straightening her posture despite the exhaustion weighing on her. The holographic projector activated, and the image of a Vrexian in the ornate robes of a council elder materialized. His blue skin was darker than Liaison Tall's, marked with the intricate patterns that indicated advanced age and status. "Elder Vren," Governor Elenis acknowledged with a formal bow. May the stars guide your wisdom. Governor Elenis, the elder returned the greeting. Your survival brings relief to the council. We had feared the worst when Siltar IV fell. His gaze shifted to Mara, eyes narrowing slightly. And you must be Captain Kincaid of the human contingent. 105th Human Skyborne Rangers, Mara corrected, standing at attention but not offering the formal bow typically expected when addressing a council elder. Sir, a flicker of annoyance crossed the elder's features, quickly masked. Yes. Well, the council has received preliminary reports of your unconventional rescue operation. Liaison Tall was most insistent that we acknowledge your unit's role in the extraction. My Rangers did their duty. Sir, 45 of them died doing it. Regrettable losses, the elder said, though his tone suggested he considered such casualties an inevitable consequence of human tactics. Nevertheless, the Council recognizes the value of the outcome. The intelligence contained within the war room and the lives of our personnel are assets we could not afford to lose. Governor Elenis stepped forward. Elder Vren, I feel compelled to state for the record that without Captain Kincaid's team, none of us would have survived. The neural core they destroyed has set back the Skarathi psychic network expansion by years, possibly decades. So, Liaison Tal indicated, the elder acknowledged, which brings me to the purpose of this communication. Captain Kincaid, upon your arrival at Thera 9, you and your surviving Rangers are to be received with full honors. Furthermore, the Council has reconsidered its position on the utility of human airborne insertion tactics. Mara maintained her neutral expression, though surprise rippled through her. Sir? A new interspecies training program is being established. The Council requires experienced instructors to develop what we are calling the Galactic Skyborne Core. The elder's mouth twisted slightly, as if the words themselves were distasteful. You are being offered the position of Warden of Council Defense with oversight of this program. The promotion was so unexpected that for a moment, Mara was speechless. Warden of Council Defense was a position typically reserved for species that had been council members for centuries, not the relatively recent human addition to galactic society. I'm honored, Elder Vren, she finally replied, but my place is with my Rangers. Your Rangers, Captain, will form the core of the new training cadre. Those who survive, at any rate. The elder's expression hardened slightly. This is not a request. The Council has determined that human tactical innovation, properly harnessed and refined, may provide advantages in our continuing conflict with the Skarathi. In other words, they couldn't ignore the results any longer. Human methods had succeeded where Council doctrine had failed, and now they wanted to appropriate those methods while maintaining control over their implementation. Governor Elenis caught Mara's eye, giving her an almost imperceptible nod. The message was clear. Take the win. Use the position to ensure human voices were heard in Council military planning. In that case, Elder Vren, I accept the position, Mara said, on condition that my Rangers receive full Council citizenship and benefits, including those who fell on Siltar IV. Their families will be provided for. The elder's eyes narrowed at her audacity in presenting conditions, but after a moment, he inclined his head. The Council is prepared to extend such considerations, given the exceptional circumstances. Then we have an agreement. Indeed. The elder's tone suggested he was already reconsidering the wisdom of placing a human in such a prestigious position. Governor Elenis will provide you with the formal documentation upon your arrival at Thera 9. Until then, Captain, or should I say, Warden Kincaid. The transmission ended, leaving the three of them standing in silence. Well, Mira said finally, that was unexpected. Not entirely, Governor Elenis countered. The Council is nothing if not pragmatic. When presented with incontrovertible evidence of a superior method, they will adapt, however reluctantly. She turned to Mara. Congratulations. Warden, you've achieved something no human has before. We've achieved it, Mara corrected. Every ranger who made the drop, whether they survived or not. She looked at Mira. Make sure that's reflected in our after-action report. Names, ranks, contributions, every single one. Yes, Captain, sorry, Warden. Mara shook her head. Not until we reach Thera 9. Until then, I'm still just the captain who got half her unit killed on a drop the Council said couldn't succeed. She left the communications center, needing some time alone to process everything that had happened. The diplomatic vessel was large enough to offer private quarters for senior personnel, and she made her way to the small cabin that had been assigned to her. Once inside, with the door sealed, Mara finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of the day. She removed her armor piece by piece, wincing at the bruises and minor cuts that covered her body. The suit's medical systems had kept her functional during the mission, masking pain and treating injuries automatically. But now every ache made itself known. She sat heavily on the edge of the narrow bunk, physical and emotional exhaustion threatening to overwhelm her. 45 Rangers dead. Ree gone. A promotion she'd never sought to a position that would take her away from active field command. It was too much to process all at once. A soft chime indicated someone at her door. Mara considered ignoring it, but duty was too deeply ingrained. "Enter," she called. The door slid open to reveal Lieutenant Mira, carrying a data pad and looking almost as exhausted as she felt. "Sorry to disturb you, Captain, but there's something you need to see." He handed her the pad. Message from Aquila Sovereign. They survived the engagement with the Hive ship, but with heavy damage. They're limping to Thera 9 on backup systems. "Good news, then," Mara said, relieved that their diversion hadn't cost more lives. "There's more. Before they broke off engagement, their sensors detected something unusual in the Skarathi psychic emissions." Mira gestured to the pad. "The pattern signatures match what we encountered in the war room." Mara studied the data, recognition dawning. "The Queen." "Yes, she survived the neural core destruction, weakened, but alive. And based on these readings, she's broadcasting directly to the Skarathi High Command." "Meaning she's still a threat." Mara set the pad down, her mind already analyzing implications. "Did Sovereign get a location fix?" "Partial. Somewhere in the Darasi sector, at least 12 systems away from Siltar. They're sending the data to Council Intelligence for further analysis." Mara nodded slowly. "So our mission wasn't just a rescue. It was the opening move in what could be a whole new phase of the war." "That's how I read it." Mira hesitated, then asked, "What will you do when we reach Thera 9? About the Warden position?" "Accept it," Mara said without hesitation. "Use it to make sure the Rangers get the recognition and resources they deserve. And," she added with grim determination, "prepare for the next drop, because there will be one." Against the Queen. Eventually, the Skarathi won't give up after one setback. They'll regroup, adapt, try again, and we need to be ready when they do. She stood, ignoring the protest from her battered body. "Start preparing the after-action report. I want it completed before we reach Thera 9. Mira saluted, recognizing the dismissal. As he turned to leave, Mara called after him, "And Jovan, thank you for coming back for me in the war room. You disobeyed a direct order. A ghost of a smile crossed his face. Technically, Captain, you ordered me to get the Council personnel out. You never specifically ordered me not to come back. Semantics, Lieutenant. Rangers specialize in finding loopholes. Ma'am, it's part of our adaptability. After he left, Mara returned to the viewport, staring out at the swirling patterns of jump space. Somewhere out there, a wounded Skarathi queen was plotting her revenge. The war was far from over, but for the first time since humanity had joined the Galactic Council, their voice and their methods would be truly heard. Air we own, she whispered to herself, a promise and a memorial to those who had fallen. All of it. 3 months later, the Galactic Skyborne Academy gleamed in the light of Thera 9's twin suns, its architecture a blend of various Council species styles with distinctive human elements incorporated throughout. From the observation platform of the main training tower, Warden Mara Kincaid watched as the newest class of recruits completed their first simulated drop. Their formation was ragged, their coordination lacking. But there was potential there. Species that had never considered atmospheric insertion as a viable tactic were learning to embrace the controlled chaos of a drop. Vrexians, Taraxis, Iridians, and a dozen other Council races trained alongside humans, each bringing their unique physiological advantages to the program. Bravo Team is still breaking formation too early, Lieutenant Mira observed beside her. As chief instructor, he oversaw the daily training regimen. And the Iridians are having trouble adjusting to the variable gravity fields. They'll improve, Mara said confidently. Remember our first training drops. We weren't any better. Worse, probably, Mira admitted with a slight smile. At least none of these recruits have vomited inside their helmets yet. A chime from Mara's wrist console indicated an incoming priority message. "Excuse me," she said, stepping away to take the communication privately. The holographic display showed the face of Governor Elenis, now promoted to Council Coordinator for the Darasai Sector Defense Initiative. Warden Kincaid, she greeted formally, though her silver features relaxed into a more personal expression immediately after. "How goes the training?" "Progress is steady. Coordinator. We'll have the first joint species drop teams ready for field certification within 2 months." "Excellent. The Council is pleased with your reports." The Governor's expression turned more serious. "I'm contacting you regarding Operation Silent Arrow. Council intelligence has confirmed the location of the Skarathi Queen. She's established a new hive fortress in the Vega Obscura system." Mara's pulse quickened. "Confirmation level?" 97%. We've detected the same psychic signature pattern from Siltar Fu, much stronger now. She's rebuilding her network. Timeframe for mission approval? The Council votes tomorrow. Given the stakes, authorization is expected to be granted immediately. Governor Elenis paused, then added, "This will be the first deployment of the new Skyborne Corps. Warden, the Council will be watching closely." "As will the Queen," Mara noted. "She knows we're coming." "Undoubtedly, but she doesn't know how or when. That advantage remains yours." After the communication ended, Mara returned to the observation platform, where Mira was still evaluating the trainee's performance. "Problems?" he asked, noting her expression. "Opportunities," she corrected. "How many drop teams could we field immediately, if necessary?" Mira considered the question. 3 at full readiness. Maybe 5 if we accelerate the certification for the advanced trainees. His eyes narrowed. They found her, didn't they? The Queen? Vega Obscura system. Operation approval expected tomorrow. Mara watched as the recruits below completed their exercise, some with grace, others barely maintaining control. "Begin preparation protocols. I want equipment checks, mission simulations, and tactical briefings ready within 48 hours. You'll lead the drop personally? Mara nodded. The council might have made me a warden, but I'm still a ranger first. Some things you don't delegate. Mira didn't argue. He knew as well as she did that this mission would be different from Siltar, more dangerous, with higher stakes. The Queen would be expecting them this time, prepared for human tactics. It would take everything they had learned, and more, to succeed. I'll inform the senior instructors, he said, already moving toward the exit. And I'll update the mission simulators with what we know about Vega Obscura. Left alone on the platform, Mara turned her gaze skyward, toward the stars that were just becoming visible as Thera 9's suns began to set. Somewhere out there, a Skarathi queen waited, rebuilding her power, planning her revenge. And somewhere else, the spirits of 45 rangers, among them, watched over their comrades who would soon make another impossible drop. We're coming, Mara whispered to the darkening sky. And this time, we're bringing the whole galaxy with us. In her mind, she could almost hear the response, the battle cry of the Rangers, now adopted by the Galactic Skyborne Corps, echoing across species and worlds. Erwion,